teenagers in California this week learned an important lesson. When you behave like chaos goblins in the back of a driverless taxi, the car may not have a driver, but it does apparently have boundaries. According to San Mateo police, the teens were riding in a Waymo robotaxi while allegedly drinking, shooting gel beads out the window, and turning being chauffeured by a robot into the world's dumbest audition tape for juvenile court. The robotaxi, perhaps after running an internal calculation, teenagers plus projectiles plus alcohol equals absolutely not, stopped the ride and contacted authorities. Officers arrived and detained the passengers, with police later writing that the teens had been shooting Orbeez from the car while enjoying what they delicately called afternoon libations, a phrase that somehow makes underage drinking sound like a troubled picnic at Dalton Abbey. Now let's pause on the obvious. 15-year-olds and alcohol are already a legal garbage fire. California has specific rules around open containers in vehicles, and adult taxi passengers may be treated differently in certain states, but none of that really helps when the passengers are minors, the drinks are illegal, and the vehicle is apparently filing a group project report titled "Reasons Humanity Was a Mistake." Waymo's own rules are also extremely clear. No drugs or alcohol in the robo-taxi, regardless of whether it's allowed by local law. In other words, even if you find a loophole big enough to drive a self-driving car through, Waymo is still going to point at the sign and say, nope. The teens, however, did not stop at one rule violation. Apparently, restraint was not invited on this ride. Waymo requires riders under 18 to be supervised by an adult. It also bars passengers from throwing objects out the vehicle and carrying weapons. A gel bead shooter may be marketed as a toy, but when it's discharged from a moving car, you have officially crossed from kids being kids into, please explain this to the judge using your inside voice. The teens may have known their Orbeez gel bead shooter was not a real firearm, but that distinction is much less comforting to everyone else, including a robotaxi's camera, nearby pedestrians, and officers responding to a report that someone might be shooting from a car, primarily because the two had painted their toy gun to look real. Waymo says that it may review car video in certain situations, and that support personnel may access live video during urgent cases, which is another reminder that driverless cars are not a private clubhouse. It is a heavily sensor-equipped corporate pod with upholstery. Even when toy guns are not painted to look real, police note that toy guns, water guns, and BB guns can still create real danger, especially when people cannot immediately tell what they are. That is the key point here. This was not a harmless prank, so much as a stack of bad decisions wearing a fake mustache. Firing projectiles from a car can hurt people. Brandishing realistic toy weapons can terrify bystanders. And if your grand plan ends with a robot calling the police on you, perhaps the robot was not the problem. Let's talk for a moment about the toy at the center of all of this, because somehow we now need a product explainer for things children should not fire from moving vehicles. Orbeez shooters, often called gel blasters, are motorized or spring-loaded toys that fire hydrated, super-absorbent water beads, which is a phrase that sounds adorable right up until someone is launching them 90 feet across a parking lot, like the world's least effective riot cannon. Depending on the model and automatic features, they can cost anywhere from about $25 to $150 US, meaning parents can now spend real money on what is essentially a plastic liability dispenser. You can buy these things online or at plenty of toy and sporting goods stores, because apparently the retail sector looked at objects shaped like firearms that shoot projectiles and said, sure, Put them next to the basketballs. And to be clear, they are toys when used correctly. On private property, in designated outdoor arenas, with eye protection, supervision, and at least one functioning adult nearby who understands that it's just a prank is not a legal defense. Here, however, is where the fun little backyard game swerves directly into, congratulations, you may have committed a felony. Because Orbeez shooters can resemble real firearms, especially once someone decides to modify them into a prop from a very stupid crime scene. They come with serious safety and legal concerns. Shooting unsuspecting people in public is not harmless fun. It is dangerous, illegal, and a spectacular way to turn a toy into evidence. Brandishing one in a public place or firing it from inside a moving vehicle can spark panic, summon police, and create exactly the kind of situation where nobody has time to say, relax, officer, it's a hydrated, super absorbent polymer. Then, if a child paints the toy to look like a real weapon, the danger does not increase by a little. It rockets upward like common sense being launched out of a cannon. At that point, the issue is no longer whether the toy leaves a mess. The issue is whether someone, police, a bystander, or a legally armed person, mistakes it for a real gun and reacts accordingly. That is not a misunderstanding you want to workshop in real time. That is the entire reason these toys need bright colors, orange tips, clear rules, and adults willing to say, no, absolutely not. Put down the discount panic machine. Kids painting toy guns to look real is not just a bad idea. It's the kind of bad idea that arrives wearing a tiny backpack full of consequences, especially when they cover the blaze orange safety tip, the one part of the toy specifically designed to scream, please do not mistake me for an actual firearm. Here's where the real danger starts. Orbeez shooters already live in an uncomfortably visually gray area. They are toys, yes, but they are also shaped like weapons, because apparently childhood fun now comes with a footnote for first responders. Their bright colors and orange tips are supposed to make the difference obvious. But when a kid snaps off the tip, wraps it in black tape, or paints it to look more realistic, that toy starts cosplaying as a crisis. And the danger is not theoretical. It is the very real possibility that someone sees what looks like a gun and responds with an actual gun. One that fires bullets, not squishy little pellets. Police in Chester, Pennsylvania saw exactly how quickly this can spiral when in April 2025, a witness called 911 to report what looked like an armed carjacking and shooting. In reality, it was brothers and friends playing with hobby guns. But from a distance, kids just messing around can look an awful lot like, someone call every available unit immediately. And that is the nightmare scenario. Someone nearby, maybe even a person legally carrying a firearm, believes they are witnessing a real threat and reacts before anyone gets a chance to explain. Actually, these are hydrated polymer beads, because history has shown us that nobody has ever calmed down faster after hearing the phrase hydrated polymer beads. Police already have far too much to process when responding to a weapons call. They are moving toward a scene with incomplete information, high stakes, and sometimes only seconds to decide what they are actually seeing. Adding realistic-looking toy guns to that equation is not kids being kids. It's handing everyone involved a pop quiz in life or death decision-making with no study guide and a terrible grading curve. No officer wants to take a life over a toy. No parent wants their child mistaken for a threat. And no community needs another tragedy, especially one caused by a plastic object being made to look just real enough to ruin everything. The blaze orange tip exists for a reason, and that reason is not aesthetic flair for America's tiniest arm dealers. In 1989, the federal government decided that realistic toys and imitation firearms needed a solid blaze orange plug permanently attached to the barrel, recessed no more than 6 millimeters from the muzzle. Because apparently, police do not make children's toys indistinguishable from deadly weapons, had to be written down. Then in 1992, the U.S. Department of Commerce expanded the rule saying toy guns must either have orange tip markings or be manufactured in bright, non-standard colors. A thrilling, bureaucratic way of saying, if it's a toy, maybe do not dress it up for an armed standoff. As if this situation needed one more layer of national absurdity, real firearms are now being manufactured or custom modified to look like recognizable toys, everyday objects, and even building blocks, because apparently the line between playroom and crime scene evidence table was not blurry enough. The result is a safety nightmare in which toys are made to look like real guns, guns are made to look like toys, and everyone else is left trying to tell the difference in the few seconds before something irreversible happens. This is why police departments treat all gun threats, including those involving toy, replica, or airsoft guns, as legitimate, life-threatening incidents. Officers are trained to treat every weapon as real until they have secured the scene and verified it's a toy, as split-second decisions must be made to protect public and officer safety. So what can parents do? Start with the boring, deeply unglamorous work of actually checking. Look in bedrooms, look in backpacks, look wherever a modified toy might end up, because apparently modern parenting now includes low-level contraband inspection. If you find an altered Orbeez gun missing the orange tip, taped up, painted black, or made to look more realistic, take it away. Not because you're trying to ruin anyone's fun, but because the alternative is explaining to a child why their toy looks like something that could get them killed. Parents also need to know what their kids are watching online, because the internet has once again looked at a questionable idea and said, what if we made it worse in tutorial form? There are countless social media videos showing how to modify Orbeez or similar shooters so they look real, because apparently toy gun was not already close enough to the edge of catastrophe. One short was even titled, "It's Just a Water Gun, Officer," complete with clown emoji, which is less a joke than a tiny digital confession that everyone involved knows exactly how stupid this is.